All right, today we are diving into a massive topic: modern education. We're going to break down three really big ideas that are completely shaking up how we teach, how we learn, and honestly, why it's all so incredibly important for our future. So let's just start with a question that, really gets to the heart of it all. The world we live in is more complex, more interconnected than ever before. So is the education system that most of us grew up with, is it really built to prepare us for the challenges we're facing right now and the ones that are just around the corner? And that's exactly the puzzle we're going to piece together. The solutions, it turns out, really come down to three powerful shifts in how we think about learning: making it more connected, making it more inclusive, and making it way more adaptive. So let's dig in and figure out what each of those really looks like. Okay, before we jump into the solutions, we gotta properly diagnose the problem, right? The big challenge for education today is that the old model, the one that sorted all knowledge into these neat, separate little boxes, it just isn't working anymore. The world has sprinted ahead and our classrooms are playing catch up. This brings us to our first big idea, which is all about taking a sledgehammer to those boxes. We're talking about the interdisciplinary approach. It's designed to build bridges between all these different fields of knowledge to create a much more complete way of understanding and, more importantly, solving problems. To really get what's new, we have to look at the old way of doing things: disciplinarity. It's a fancy word for the classic model. Just think about it. History, biology, economics, all treated like their own separate islands. And this way of organizing things, it goes all the way back to medieval universities. It gave a structure for sure, but it also gave us, well, a lot of walls. And this table just lays out the difference perfectly. The old way, disciplinarity, is all about digging one very deep, very specific hole. And that's great for answering very specific questions. But the new way, interdisciplinarity, is about connecting all those different holes. It's about synthesis and innovation. It's the difference between being an expert with a hammer versus being an expert builder who knows exactly when to use a hammer, a saw, or a level to create something totally new. So why does this matter so much right now? Well, because our biggest challenges, we're talking about things like climate change or global pandemic, they just don't care about our neat academic boxes. They spill over everywhere. Critics argue that these rigid silos can actually choke creativity and create these intellectual gatekeepers who resist new ideas. The interdisciplinary approach is the answer to that. It's about mashing up different perspectives to find solutions that no single field could ever find on its own. All right, on to our second big idea. This one is all about the people. It's the inclusive approach, and it's founded on a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. Education has to be designed from the ground up to serve every single learner, and to do it equitably. Now, this slide right here highlights one of the most critical shifts in modern education: the difference between equality and equity. See, equality is giving everyone the exact same box to stand on to see over a fence, but that assumes everyone is the same height to begin with. Equity is about giving each person the right size box they need, so they actually have a fair shot at seeing over that fence. It's a small change in wording, but it is an absolute game changer in practice. So how do we actually do this? It really boils down to three core principles. First, the everybody principle. That means the teacher sees themselves as responsible for all the students in the room, period. Second is co-agency, which means students aren't just empty buckets waiting for knowledge. No, they're active partners in their own learning. And finally, and this one might be the most important, trust. It means you start from a place of belief. You believe every student wants to learn. And if something's not working, you look at the environment, not at the student first. And here is exactly why this is non-negotiable. The modern classroom is just unbelievably diverse. Students are navigating everything you can imagine, from dyslexia and ADHD to anxiety or physical disabilities. Inclusive education isn't some nice little add-on. It is the fundamental work of creating a space where every single one of these students feels like they belong and has what they need to actually succeed. Okay, our third and final big idea is the adaptive approach. This is where cool technology meets a much more flexible teaching philosophy to create a learning journey that is truly personalized for each and every student. Now, this idea isn't totally new, but wow, has it evolved. It kind of started as differentiated instruction, where a teacher might make, a few different versions of a worksheet. Then technology came along and we got adaptive learning through e-learning platforms. But today, we talk about adaptive pedagogy, which is so much bigger. It's a whole philosophy that weaves together technology, ethics, and strategy into a truly fluid, responsive classroom. So, the key thing to get here is that it's so much more than just some fancy software. It really is a mindset. It's about an instructor who plans ahead, who anticipates where students might struggle, but who is also constantly adjusting their approach based on the real time feedback they're getting from the class. The goal is to make the learning environment feel alive and responsive, not rigid and one size fits all. So, what's actually happening under the hood with these systems? Well, they're constantly taking the pulse of a student's understanding. Then they use that data to customize what that student sees next. It might be some targeted feedback or maybe a totally different lesson, delivered at the exact moment it's needed most. You can almost think of it like having a personal tutor who knows exactly where you are and gives you the perfect next step to keep you moving forward. So there you have it. 3 really powerful ideas. But here's the secret sauce. The real magic happens when you stop seeing them as separate trends and you start seeing them as interconnected parts of one single, powerful vision for what education can and should be. Let's just pull it all together here. The interdisciplinary approach, that tears down the silos so we can tackle complex problems. The inclusive approach, that opens up the doors so that everyone can come in and participate meaningfully. And the adaptive approach, that builds a unique path for every single learner to walk. When you combine them, you don't just get a slightly better system. You get an education that is truly holistic, genuinely equitable, and incredibly dynamic. And that really brings us to our final thought. These aren't just abstract theories for academics to debate. These are practical strategies that can empower every single one of us. So, the question I want to leave you with is this. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just a curious, lifelong learner, how can you start weaving these ideas into your own life to learn better, to learn deeper, and to learn more meaningfully?